Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch, myself, Roland, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today I am very delighted to welcome back a close personal friend of mine, a great author, Mr. Terrance Layhew of the Suit Up podcast, and an author of quite a few books in my collection now. How are you doing, Terrance? Thank you so much for joining us. Looking amazing.
Thank you. Yes, I am doing fantastic. It is great to be joined by you two gentlemen again. I made sure to pick out like my James Bondish tie and suit to wear on today's episode because, Roland, you bring the Bond of it all.
Well, actually, somebody accused me the other day of like Indiana Jones cosplay all the time, but
hey, course, that is a distinct style.
Because Craig just hasn't brought any cosplay at all. He's just wearing regular human clothes. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks again for joining us once more, Terrance. So yeah, you've written a bunch of books, and I think the one that recently put out is a bit shorter, which is something that we wanted to talk about in general, because we had, last month, I believe we had Kay Wagner on that on the podcast, and she had mentioned how short books were becoming more popular on Amazon. There's a whole category for it. When I look on there, there's Kindle short reads, 15 minutes, which is, and they're basing this on number of pages, so 1 to 11 pages. 30 minutes is 12 to 21 pages. 45 is 20. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on how fast you read, I guess. But so that's like, it's a new thing that people are. When we started, we were writing short stories, which were 5,000 words. I don't even know how many pages that was translating to, and then it switched over to novel length, and everybody was all novel length and dropped the short stories. But now it seems like we're going back full circle. So that's something we thought it would be cool to talk about with you. So why don't you tell us about your new book and how long it is, and then we'll get into that.
I'm holding up a thing of it here, and you're holding up one as well. There we go.
Unwanted Passenger, a Mitch Mayhew story, is a golden age aviation novella. It's funny you bring up the Amazon categories of it all too, because technically this broke the top 100 in the 90-minute mystery short fiction, which was really cool to get there. But I think the thing that surprised me so much is this book has gotten a great response, and largely because it's a slimmer read. It's not very heavy. I think it's 15,000 words. Veritas Entertainment, the publisher, they did a men's adventure fiction May contest where they had to basically open the door. Hey, you have an adventure novella, give it to us. We'll release them kind of as the month goes on in bronze, silver, and finally the gold winner at the end of the month. Mine happened to take the gold. So technically, again, award-winning adventure novella, but yeah, they wanted to do more of this smaller, quicker read novella length fiction. Even the novels that Veritas is publishing is in that 30,000 word range, with the intention being, let's bring it back to these smaller, easier to read, quick books that are predominantly more of a men's adventure fiction genre type, like those old paperbacks, Mickey Spillane, or even some of the early James Bond novels. They're not huge reads. So they're really trying to pivot as a publisher towards something that's more easily consumable, quick read type of book. So I was really thrilled. Originally, my plan had been that this was going to be the opening act of a full novel. And now I'm taking basically my novel plan and kind of up into multiple this size books for Veritas to publish.
I think that's amazing. We mentioned before we started recording, I've written a few articles recently about men's fiction and women's fiction, and I think it is very important to note that men and women tend to read different types of books and have different types of reading habits, which I find really interesting. And contrary to popular belief, women's fiction, more books are getting published and more women are reading, and books are becoming, cultural icons. There's ACOTAR, A Crown of Rose and Thorns, or Crown of Thorns and Roses.
Thorns and Roses, got it.
Yes, which I read, which is a fantastic book, and it's iconic. And you could so many people are discussing and making TikTok videos and things. And some women read a book a day on Kindle, and others they love getting their big chunky books. This is a book I wrote that's like 100,000 words and things, and that's great. But men tend to be reading less, and I think it's so interesting. A lot of men don't like reading on the Kindle, and a lot of men don't like picking up a book that's going to take 6 weeks to read and weighs like 3 pounds. And so something like this is so fun because not only do you get to read it, it takes an afternoon of your time if you're reading it. It's fun, but afterwards you could then talk to your other friends who've read it, because if you, as a man, if you make a commitment to read like a 90-minute thing, then you get the enjoyable part of like being able to talk to your friends about the same book that you've read. And I'm just wondering, is this the new way that we're going to get men reading again, by writing shorter fiction? You mentioned the James Bond books. I've got, you know, a couple of the original Pan paperbacks, and this is a James Bond knockoff they published in the 60s. It's actually worth more than these ones now, but there are like 4x7 and about 40,000 words, so you can literally slip this in your pocket. Pocket size used to mean something. I'm like, do we need to think more about print fiction, and do we need to think more about the lengths of fiction?
I 100% think so, because I don't know about you guys, I love the tactile feel of a real book. Like that, I feel like in the over digitization of everything, losing out on that customer experience. I remember, Roland, when I sent you a copy of Unwanted Passenger, one of your first comments was the production, the putting together of a physical book is a standout to it. And that was one of the things that I 100% clocked when I got my copies too, because like being able to hold something physically, it doesn't feel trashy. It feels like it feels like a good book. It reads like a good book. These are the types of things that add to the experience that I think allows smaller publishers to be able to charge a higher dollar figure per copy when it's actually an experience, not just disposable printing.
Absolutely. And sometimes not even printing. I mean, you know, you can have your Kindle. I've probably got, for every book that I read on a Kindle, I've got 8 that I haven't got round to reading yet. And maybe I never will. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Craig, when it comes to you reading? Because I know you're a reader. What are your habits?
So I'm definitely a Kindle reader, but it's not that I don't like the physical. I definitely do prefer it, but it's more of a convenience for me to have the books on the Kindle, take them with me, not have, you know, I'm going on vacation, I want to take a bunch of books with me. I don't want to take a bunch of physical books with me. It's just so much easier to have them all in my Kindle. You
want to check an entire extra bag just full of books?
Right, crazy. Exactly. Especially these days when everything costs, you know, a charge for your bags, and your, you know, even carry-ons are being charged for now. So, you know, and plus I find I like to read before bed. So, and it helps me sleep. I'm not a great sleeper. So I find that reading makes me tired. If I'm already tired, you know, I can read during the day and I'm not falling asleep. But if I'm reading at night, it's helping me. And when I'm ready to fall asleep, I just shove the Kindle under my pillow and I don't even notice it. Like, so from that perspective, I prefer the Kindle, but I do see, you know, the tactile feel. I do miss that, and once in a while I still will pick up a paperback and read it. But you know, whether or not, you know, this sort of meets that need, I wonder how like I could fit that one under my pillow, but then, you know, it's again, it's like having all these physical books and, you know, the space for them, and I don't know. It's a tough thing being a writer these days, and you know, especially when you do sort of miss that. You see the value of that, but you also see the convenience of, you know, of the Kindle. But I prefer longer reads only because I enjoy, if I enjoy a book, I want it to go on forever, right?
Yes.
And so a shorter read to me is also, you know, then it's like it's over really quickly. So it's like, I guess I'm not the typical man that you're describing in your scenario, which is probably true.
The funny thing with that, though, is, Craig, I would say my favorite book of all time is The Count of Monte Cristo, and it is a thick-ass book. We're talking, it's easily double the average size book today, but the thing that makes that work is that it was based on a serialization. I feel like what I'm doing with Mitch Mayhew, and what I hope I start to see more often with slimmer, thin reads is that these are more serials in a lot of senses, compilations to a larger, grander story. And I think that's what makes it exciting to me, because I love the old time radio stuff, the old adventure serials from the 30s and 40s, that kind of storytelling where you have these more bite-sized increments of story that is a grander, larger narrative.
Yeah, I used to love The Saint by Leslie Charteris, and you would have, I mean, the novels would be paperbacks like this, but then you would also have, you know, collections of 4 short stories or something that you would read one in a newspaper, and there were small, short, really good reads. I think that's one thing that's very important, is it's got to be good, and it's more difficult to write a good short book than it is to write a good long book. I'm
actually curious on your guys' feedback on that. I feel like it's easier to write a shorter book, even though the runway is, I think, like,
shorter book, it might be easier. A short story, I think, is hard.
Very hard.
Right? Because trying to make it work in 5,000, 10,000 words. In 30,000, you have a little bit more leeway, and you don't feel like you have to come up with all sorts of side plots and different, you know. So I could see, you know, writing a book that size might be a little easier and less daunting than a whole book. But a short story, I could see it being much more difficult. But you know, it's interesting too, because to me, the serialization aspect, for an author, I think that's great, right? If you can serialize these and then potentially bring them either into a full book or just a collection volume, that's great. But I wonder about the what we've seen in the marketplace recently. Amazon Vella, Radish, both of those were built on serialization, and both have shut down, right? So the market, like, what's going on, like, but then we're seeing these short stories, and I wonder too if it's I know with my own experience with Radish, and I wasn't a reader of it, I went on and I published a few of my books. It was splitting a book up into pieces, which is very different than a full-blown start to finish book that's serial, small one, and maybe another one later and another one later. That's a different story, and maybe that's why that whole thing failed, where this might not.
I'm going to be really curious to see how this experiment goes. I'm just finishing up the second installment of Mitch Mayhew's story, so the proof will be in the pudding when it finally comes out. But they did the same thing with the Felix Leiter book that came out, The Hook in the Eye, and they experienced a great deal of trouble just technically trying to get out the chapters at a time to publish it as a serial. I love that there's this concept that people are trying to reach. I think that we just haven't perfected the method of delivery, is my honest opinion, because it used to work in the what are they called? The Scribner's magazines, Reader's Digest, stuff like that. Playboy serialized the Bond books. Like this was a model that worked for so long, and yet now it feels like there's still a hunger for it in some places. It's just there isn't. Heck, fan fiction works that way, but there isn't a good delivery mechanism at this point, I think. And Amazon themselves tried it, and it didn't seem to pan out.
I'll tell you what the delivery mechanism is here, because I always think of things from a commercial point of view. You spend the next year growing a big bushy beard, writing 10 Mitch Mayhew stories, and then what you do is you do a direct sales campaign where you say, you sign up $15 a month. Every month you'll receive a Mitch Mayhew story in the mail, and then you can read about it. And you know, that's how you sign people up for a reoccurring thing. And so you obviously have to stack up the book so you can keep it going for a year, unless you would like deliver on that. But that's, you get one in the mail and you'll wake up and you're like, oh look, it's Mitch Mayhew Day. I was thinking when I was a kid, I'm sure you guys probably read comics as well, like we had one in England called The Eagle, and it was like every Sunday I would go to the off license with my 50p piece, and I'd give them the 50p coin, and I'd get my Eagle comic, and I'd read the Dan Dare comic, and I'd read the Mask comic, and I'd read this comic, and then that was my excitement for the week. And it's like, that's something we could come back to.
That's my one complaint. I say complaint with a small c, not a capital C. Veritas published so the 4 winners, and then they published all the rest of their contestants, which was cool because they all of a sudden have a catalog of 9 books about this size. Great for their business. They now have portfolio. They now have catalog. The thing I would have loved to have seen was, hey, sign up. You'll get one a month.
Yeah.
And I would have probably enjoyed that more, because then it feels like you get that gift box excitement type feeling. I'm signed up for the GQ box, and every time I get it, I'm like, ooh, what goodies did I get sent?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder about the model and how much you can do with it if you're going to send it over the mail. Like, I don't know the costs involved in doing that. If you're and can you really write a book a month as well if you were going to try to say, oh, you know, X amount every month and you'll get a new book. Maybe it's every 2 months or maybe it's every 3 months. But you have to factor in the amount of you know, packaging and postage and all that you would have to go through. And that's you know, Amazon's figured that out already, right?
Yeah.
But the rest of us, it's hard.
Well, I mean, on Amazon, if you go to Amazon right now and buy this book, it is $9.99, and I think I have Prime, so that's free delivery. And so, you know, that's $10 is a nice thing. You're like, I'm going to drop $10 on the new Terrance Layhew book. Bonk, done. If it's for something like my book here, it starts to get ridiculous, and it's like $20 and then you factor in it's $25 with packaging, and it's like, no, it's a small thing, a small price for a short, enjoyable thing. It's quite a nice idea. I used to write, I don't know if I.
But that's coming from Amazon, right? And they're paying for the shipping. So, but if you're saying for Terrance to say, hey, every month I'm going to send you a new book, he has to eat the cost of the shipping.
True, but if you don't go through Amazon, you might be able, I don't know, you'd have to talk to a printer and see what you can do, and a distributor, and there are options out there, and what your profit take is.
And what I want to do is convince Veritas that they need to do that, so then they eat the cost and deal with all that stuff. I just get to sit back and write the story. Well, we'll see how well that works out in the long run. This weekend is my first time doing an in-person book event at a aviation museum. I figured
You have me at Aviation Museum.
This would go over well since it's the golden age of adventure. And that's one of the things I'm excited about. Is I'm assuming a lot of the audience there, it's a drive-in fly-in breakfast. They're doing a small event. It's going to be a crowd of probably men, not to characterize Roland, but probably men roughly your age and maybe a little older. And I think
I was at an aviation museum on Sunday, but I resent that. I literally was at the New Jersey Air Victory Museum on Sunday, but shut up.
So I do, my assumption, my hope, the thing I want to see play out is this the thing that men are looking for? Is this the kind of short story? Is this the kind of small, quick read that a dude who maybe picks up 4 or 5 books a year would go, I'll chance it. I'll chance $10 on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think of the other books, who do you read? Like, you know, if it's Jack Carr's latest book, you're going to buy it because you know it's going to be good. But you don't necessarily experiment and go out of your lane so much, I think, as a man. Because I don't know about you, but, you know, I have 3 kids and an Italian wife. So I don't have that much spare time. So, you know, it's you have to make a decision about what you're willing to invest in. And seeing this, you're like, I can invest in that. You know, $10, that's not too bad. I can't even buy a 6-pack for that. And then it's like, and that's going to take me, you know, an afternoon to read or something. I've got that I can do as well. And that makes it a digestible amount of something of investment.
Do you guys remember that? So apparently, this is what I'm told, because I grew up in the age where movies are 2 hours at least. The original idea with like hour-and-a-half movie is that it's a film that you can play multiple times, so it increases the revenue for the theater.
Yes.
I feel like writing a book with a slightly below novel length word count can have roughly the same effect. That's at least the thing I'm trying to see. I hope works out, but that's kind of where I'm looking at it from. Because it's consumable, it doesn't take as much commitment. Like when you're browsing Netflix and you see, oh, I love the Batman, but am I going to watch a 3-hour movie with Nirvana ripoff soundtrack again?
Yeah, the first 2 hours were a great movie, and then I was like checking it. But I mean, you know, when I'm traveling somewhere, I'm like, oh god, that's a 4-hour drive away, and I'm like, oh god, that's 2 James Bond movies away, because they used to be 2 hours on the dot every time. And I think that's interesting. Yeah, they're bladder bursters, the movies these days, when they're like 3.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are you seeing more sales on the digital side or on the paperback side?
At the moment, it's about 50-50 is what I'm seeing. To the extent that this is where it's weird because it's my first time collaborating with Veritas. So they're still a newer company. They're still trying to figure out how much sales reporting do they actually give me versus not. But from what I've been able to gather on the data, it's been about 50-50.
And are they advertising it for you?
No. So I've been doing the advertising myself so far. And it's been relatively successful with the advertising, better than when I did One Man's Treasure. I'm still working out the kinks and how to advertise and market that book. Mitch Mayhew, I like the fact that it's very sticky as a concept. Airmail pilot, plane goes down, bad things happen. Pretty straightforward for writing the ad copy. And that's been the thing that I've enjoyed most working with Veritas so far, is I think they've done the best copy for my book on Amazon compared to when I wrote it myself.
That's very interesting. But I think you're right. I think concept is such an important thing. And I mean, it used to be, oh, it's the latest James Bond book, so you buy it because it's James Bond book. And when you're trying to break into things, you need to have a concept that grabs people from the beginning. I remember when I wrote my book, High Point, I was like, oh, I want to write something that's like a Clive Cussler book, because then it's easy. So someone says, what's your book about? Oh, it's a Clive Cussler book about this boat. And then
Have you guys heard of Maya, most advanced yet acceptable?
No, what a brilliant principle.
The whole concept, I read it, it's a book called The Hitmakers by Derek Thomas. He explores this concept where he uses music as his example. And if you look at the top charting musical albums, usually there's all songs that people like, have something people have already liked before, but then push things a little bit farther. When it goes too far and it breaks, no one likes it because it's too unfamiliar. But it needs to be familiar enough that people recognize it for what it is. They're not thrown off by it, but it pushes things with just enough difference where they see it as valuable. It's the same reason why Indiana Jones is really hard to repeat and redo. The Mummy is most advanced yet acceptable. Fountain of Youth is garbage.
Yeah, that's such an interesting idea. I hadn't thought about that.
So, are you trying to sell this into that sort of market so that you can try to capitalize on those? So you're using, your contacts and your groups for the James Bond stuff and saying, hey, I have this book that's very similar.
Yes. So what I've been doing so far is most of my marketing with not just the actual advertising, but when it comes to promoting stuff on my podcast for Unwanted Passenger or various social groups like Indiana Jones fans, James Bond fans, here are the things that you recognize that you really like. But here's also where it's just a tad different. So lone hero, grizzled, chain smoking, but he's in an airplane. Things like that. Set in the 1920s. You like The Great Gatsby? You love 20s era intrigue? Let's get them on a plane that crashes in the middle of the Colorado forest.
And I was just thinking of some of the great movies we've had. I remember great movie with Steven Seagal when he was thin, Under Siege, and it was Die Hard on a boat.
Yes.
And then you had Die Hard on a plane. Or Aliens was Jaws on a spaceship. And it's kind of, you get the two things that are familiar and you put them together and make something new. Sharks, tornadoes, bomb. I mean, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, they criticize people for doing that, yet those are things that are successful. And a lot of times that's how they almost, it's not necessarily how they market it officially, but unofficially, people are always like, oh, it's like, Die Hard on a boat or Die Hard. You wouldn't see that on the poster. But
I think another thing about books these days is books are more than just books you read to enjoy. They're also you're kind of buying into something.
You're buying into. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I just went to a book launch on Saturday for a our friend Joe Darlington, who's been on this
Mhm.
podcast for his book, being James Bond. And it's like, as much as the book is a really enjoyable book and it's nicely printed, you had a gang of people together all buying copies of the book, signing it, and we're like part of a club now. And it's
Mhm.
like, I've got people I can see online who have your book, and you feel like you're part of a club. With women's fiction, with Akatar, it's
Yeah.
like, you buy that, you're familiar with it. I've got a lot of lady friends who I talk about that book with because I've read it, and for me, it's a great thing. I've like gone in the secret entrance into a women's circle because I know, I've gone behind the veil and can talk about it. But it's interesting. Books as a cultural expression is a really interesting one, and I think you and I became friends because we have the same aesthetic in so many things, which includes, air fiction and retro books and stuff like that. And so by buying your book, I'm like buying into this thing that we love.
Mhm.
And kind of, is that an angle, especially towards men's fiction, that perhaps could be exploited further?
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Because it's not really cutting edge for me to say this is a day and age where men feel super isolated, just in general.
Absolutely.
And I think all people feel that way because what we are taught as Western society, as men, we aren't supposed to need people. We aren't supposed to want to be in community. We're told we're supposed to, but then also the expectation is you're not. So it's really easy to lean into the isolating elements of life. And especially if you are someone that's bookish, if you like reading, you don't tend to be the, let me go invite my 50 closest friends over for a party spontaneously. I think that one of the things that, again, Veritas has done a really great job at is they're trying to build community around their publishing. They've started a men's adventure fiction podcast. They've started a men's adventure fiction Discord server. They are trying to make it more a matter of it's not just this genre has more to it than just the books you're reading. It's the people you spend your time with to a certain extent. I'm a big fan of the Men's Adventure Fiction Quarterly. Bob Dice, Bill Cunningham, they take those old men's adventure fiction magazines and they have republished the good articles, the good stories, and put them in these lavish productions. They have like 2 or 3 different types of Facebook groups online that they share, and there are people invested in this concept and these stories. And they're also a group that I've gone, hey guys, hey look, Unwanted Passenger, like great book. It harkens to the things you enjoyed.
And I mean, part of that is it's so amazing when you've read a book and somebody else has read a book. I mean, we've done podcasts about The Great Gatsby, and it's like that's something you've read that we share the cultural lexicon of, and also my son's read it. And so when it's a short book, it's easy to do. And when you've got a series of them, it's like, Craig, you and I read the Lee Child books. Maybe we've only crossed over and read like 2 or 3 of the 25 of them, but we know what it means, and like we can have a conversation about Lee Child and Jack Reacher because we've both read from that. So yeah, it's an important part of creating your communities, having a shared language or a shared thing to build it around.
Yeah, and having shorter books, it will make it easier for more people to have read them and be able to have that community, and faster too, right? Like it takes people longer to read a longer book, and then it's longer before they will go out and talk about it online. So this is sort of like brings it a little bit faster to that. But I wonder still about, in this day and age of looking for value, right? Are people ever thinking to themselves like, do I want to pay, normal price? You have $4.99 for your Kindle version, $9.99 for your paperback for a book that is, half the size of a regular book or whatever. Do you ever see any pushback on that aspect of it?
I haven't, which is actually one of the things that surprised me the most so far with this, is that I haven't seen people tell me. When I first saw they were selling this for $10, I was like, are they insane? No one's going to buy this. And it's sold. I still am shocked. I did it for fun because I wanted to write a aviation story, and I'm seeing sales. But the thing that I think will add more value, this is me, my big scale dreaming, and this is part of what I want to see happen more with these. With these shorter reads, I think doing audiobooks or audio dramatizations will be easier because it's shorter, I think it'll be easier sell, lower cost produce a quality audiobook or audio drama version. And that, I think, increases the upsell and the actual value to it.
I think there's a lot of mileage there. Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking, though, they did a wonderful movie adaptation of the Tintin books, and they basically got 3 Tintin books and squished them together, which worked really well for the movie. But I mean, that's what you can do if you're writing shorter fiction. There's the concept and the character is what sells it, and then that gives you a lot of opportunity to take things and squish them together if you need to increase the runtime. Oh, good insight there.
And,
I wonder, did they talk to you at all about the pricing, or they just went ahead?
Nope. I don't know if this is because they're still a baby company, or if this is that they distinctly had a vision already, but they were like, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is what your cut is. We're just telling you percentages. Sign contract. Here you go.
Yeah, because I know recently Amazon made a change to how much they pay in the royalty, and if you're under $9.99, then they pay less, right? So I think that has caused a lot of books, a lot of authors, a lot of publishers to want to price their paperbacks at $9.99 or more. So that could be, I guess, one of the reasons behind that.
It's very possible. I don't know. I wasn't involved in that decision-making process, but to the just one final thing on the audiobook idea, that's part of what I like about this genre and the concept around Unwanted Passenger with being this aviation novella is it's very old-time radio type, where you get a lot of good sound effects. You can do it as high concept with as much of that sound of the airplane flying in the background, dun, 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 these little score beats, or you can do it very straight to the book, just someone reading it, and again, it won't take a lot.
I mean, this would make a cracking audio drama where you I could just imagine. That, and the nice thing is it doesn't last too long. I have my Audible account. I love listening to audiobooks, but you get an audiobook and it's like 12 hours long. And I'm kind of like, wow, because I work from home most of the time, so I don't need to commute anywhere. That's when am I going to do that? But your book, that's great. And you can listen to it an hour and a half. Bonk, job done.
Is that something that Veritas will do? Will they create it for you, or is that on your
I have no idea. Like I said, they're still a baby company. So at this point, my dreams are probably bigger than their dreams or well, they have larger dreams than I do, but I don't think that they've gotten this far yet. But I do see it as something that would be an avenue I would want to either work with them or pursue on my own.
Well, okay, let's ask it this way. Did you sign away the audiobook rights to them?
I did not. So there's still...
It's definitely in your court right now.
Yes.
And I think it's a great idea. I think adding in all this sort of sound effects and making it more of a drama than just a straight read is a really great idea for this kind of thing.
I'm a big fan of, there's a series called The Spellmonger. It won a few Audible awards. John Lee does narration. The books really took off when Podium Publishing stepped in and started doing these great audiobooks with a fantastic narrator. I think that that is a huge market potential just for stories in general, but for my stories in particular, I think that smaller read, if there's a bunch of them, it's more fun. When I got the Spellmonger books, he already had 10 books published that were in the process of being turned into audiobooks. So every 3 months, I was able to get a new one. Now, obviously, that's not something I can necessarily do right off the bat, but I do think that if you can build up a catalog of 20 books this size, I think people would get the audiobook, even if they're only an hour and a half to 2 hours long each, every 2-3 months, if they were being made.
And really, that's the model of being a successful self-published author or a successful published author. I think Lee Child had written and published 10 books before suddenly everyone knew who Jack Reacher was. And then everyone went back and read the previous books. And that meant he was in the perfect situation to suddenly cash in on that. It's you've got to build your foundation.
Your catalog.
Yeah, to build your catalog, but to have them, some people do read on the Kindle, so they can do it for Kindle for $5. Some people prefer the paperback. $10 gets you a paperback. Some people prefer to listen as an audiobook. You could do the most amazing audio plays, and that's free, quote unquote, on Audible. And this gives all sorts of different people an entryway into the world of Mitch Mayhew, which then, as you continue writing these things, grows and grows. And so somebody in 10 years' time who stumbles over Mitch Mayhew is going to come in and find like 50 books and 50 audio books and stuff that they can have an amazing time exploring. And of course, you can sit there and receive all the benefits of them exploring that. But then you've built something that it's the most stupid thing I've ever said today. You've built something that exists. You can think of if you can think of a more elegant way to say that, then let me know.
So are audiobooks that are sort of that audio drama, or is that like a thing? Like, I'm not an audiobook listener, so I always assume they're just people reading it. But is that a thing where they're with the sound effects and everything like that?
The Star Wars audiobooks are easily some of the best in the world. And it's not because they have a whole bunch of different people doing the voices. It's because they're doing stuff like in the background as the guy's reading it. And you hear them say, and the TIE fighters flew past. You hear the TIE fighter sound when they're like, and the lightsabers, the battle began. You hear whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It's stuff like that that just makes the little kid in me giddy. The model that I'm thinking through some of this on is Louis L'Amour. Obviously, huge paperbacks. He's a big inspiration to the guys that started Veritas. They have done a lot of his short stories. They've tried turning into different things, and they've done, I think, more than a dozen of his short stories and novellas as full cast audio dramas. And they have to be edited, obviously, to be a script, but they do a phenomenal job at them with the sound of the jungle in the background or the dusky sands of the West.
I remember reading my first Louis L'Amour story. It was around a campfire, basically. And it's like, yeah, that would make an amazing audio play. And making good audio drama is something that is still accessible to a lot of people. It's like, it's not like you're making a movie. It's you can still make something really good without like going crazy, and then you've got something really special to listen to, and it's an amazing experience when you listen to it and you get swept away with it.
Yeah, and I imagine it would be easier to do that with a shorter book as well, than something much longer, especially if you're going to tackle it yourself, which is always something that, with audiobooks, this is pretty expensive to have someone else do it, but at the same time, it's not easy to do yourself. You need not only specialized equipment and like a quiet, soundproof kind of room, but you have to be able to know how to do audio editing, which you can learn, but you always have to, whenever you do this sort of thing, you have to figure out the difference or the trade-offs between how much time you want to spend doing it, what you could be doing with that time writing your next book. Is that better for you than paying somebody? But it could be thousands of dollars to pay somebody to do the audiobook. It'd be cheaper, though, I imagine, for shorter books.
But then again, but I was just going to say it's $1,000, which is a totally manageable budget for an author to have to invest in that and realistically think they can see a profitable return on it.
The other thing, just to throw it out there, part of the other idea I think of writing shorter stories here is maybe this is just what I've heard through the zeitgeist, but through reading stuff by like Stephen Pressfield or William Goldman. Not that I expect Hollywood to come knocking anytime soon, but shorter fiction is easier to adapt.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they have to pull so much from when they take a regular book. And that's one of the criticisms you always see is how much they had to not show on the screen. So if it's a shorter book, they can be more true to the story.
The Gray was a short story before it became the film starring
the one with the wolves.
Yeah, the one with the wolves. Same thing with what's it called? This is part of the reason why like Call of the Wild has been adapted so many times, is that it's really a brief read. And there's one other like big book, The Great Gatsby, you can even say. It's not a long book. It's easy when something is more digestible, it does have more capacity to be adapted. And I think that's part of what I'm excited to see with this, not only with myself, but with other authors writing in shorter sizes, is I think that it gives more space for the thing to continue to evolve instead of being just a singular story. It can be adapted and changed and molded. Or the characters, like Conan the Barbarian is a great example of, these were from the pulp mags. And he as a character rose above just being in this story, and he's become Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
That's
I think.
Go
ahead.
Oh, no, I've forgotten what I was going to say. So carry on. It was brilliant, though. I will remember it soon.
We see a lot of this kind of stuff these days. So I think for your type of genre, you know, the Reacher stories are being adapted. They've been adapted in the past, but not, you know, they're getting a little truer to the form of what it is in the book. I mean, having Tom Cruise as Reacher is never a good idea. But you know, so you know, the James Bond books are always popular. You know, they sort of have, and the Tom Clancy books, those. So you know, you've got a good chance of something here once you start building on this. If it became popular and you have this character in all your books, that is the kind of thing that Hollywood, you know, would be interested in. And that's what authors have to think about sometimes. It depends, I mean, on your goals, but if that's something that is one of your goals, you have to think about how adaptable it is. How easy are you making it for people to be able to take your source material and do something more with it?
I mean,
Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yes. Sherlock Holmes. Go ahead. Run with that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, because, you know, my dad had the Strand magazines. You got these tiny short stories, except you can quite happily adapt that into a 90-minute movie with Robert Downey Jr. or an hour-long episode with Benedict Cumberbatch, or a 20-minute kids cartoon where Sherlock Holmes is actually a dog. It's like they're the same story, just adapted into different things. And that's where the benefit of short material really, really shines.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, so what's the key then in writing this short fiction?
My opinion, strong characters. Because all the things that we've just described, it's based on there being a character who can step outside the page. Someone who becomes embodied enough. As much as I love Louis L'Amour's books, I would say that few of the actual characters themselves are brands. Like you remember Hondo because you remember John Wayne. You don't remember The Gift of the Cochise. Writing a strong character that is like a Reacher type who can step and hold a franchise is the thing that you need to do. I think that that's true of any story, unless you're writing strictly literary fiction that has no appeal other than to write perfect prose.
Yeah, which literary fiction is the genre you pick if you're not interested in making money. But you're absolutely right. Having the short form, you know, if you were going to write a bunch of Mitch Mayhew stories, anyone can pick up any book in any part of the series and enjoy it because they know who the character is. It's like what makes fan fiction work. With fan fiction, you're going to read a 3,000-word story, but you don't need to worry about the characterization because you know that the characters in it are the characters from your TV shows. You've got an idea of how they work together. And that's where the best fan fiction just takes characters and puts them in and makes them behave organically. And so I think you're absolutely right. If you've got a really strong concept and a really strong character or group of characters that interact together, then that can make it work so well. Oh, look at this. We've just invented, I don't know. This is important. Hopefully someone's listening to this and being like, these three are geniuses.
We are geniuses. That's why we have a podcast.
I completely agree, though. It's all about the strong character. If you're going to write something like this, it has to be, and especially if you want to serialize it. I mean, you can't. You need that character. You need people to want to keep coming back to that character, you know, regardless of the story that is revolving around him. They have to be drawn to the character itself, and that's why we see it with Sherlock Holmes. You know, he's always the ability to solve everything and take those tiny clues, and that's what people want to see, right? And with James Bond, they want to see his suave, his, you know, the fact that he's got the girls and he's got the gadgets and he's you know, always upper class, and you know, listen, you guys know way more than I do about him, but you know, and Reacher I think is almost the antithesis of all those guys, where he's kind of, in my mind, when I read the books at least, he's not as much of a standout character other than like his physicality. He's this big burning guy, but he doesn't say very much. I guess in some ways that's kind of what makes him that character, is like he's big and he's brutish and he can, take anyone down, and he says very little. So, from that perspective, probably an easier character to write than some of the more complex ones. But yeah, I mean,
just said nothing.
What's that?
Reacher said nothing. It's like the sentence that appears so often in the book.
Exactly. Just has to stare at you. So yeah, if you have that one character, then you can sort of build your whole career around it, I guess.
It looks like we are approaching the top of the hour, but that actually seems like a really good place to wrap things up. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel quite enthused. And Craig, do you have any final thoughts or questions before we ask Terrance where people can go and find out the adventures of Mitch Mayhew and other things?
No, I think this, like you said, I think it's been a fascinating discussion about short fiction, and that's really something that's becoming much more prominent these days on Amazon and elsewhere. So if this is something that people have been thinking about, then I think this is a great discussion to sort of get them understanding what it's all about and whether they want to do it.
Brilliant. Well, Terrance, it has been an absolute delight having you back on the show. I'm sure this won't be the last time. Where can people who have become intrigued by the idea of Mitch Mayhew and his aerial exploits go and find this book and your other books? Because you've written some cracking books. You're quite the genre explorer.
Well, first and foremost, Roland, Craig, thank you so much for having me on the show. It is a pleasure to talk literature and these big story idea stuff with the two of you. You can find more about me by going to terrancelayhew.com. You can also find me and my books on Amazon. Unwanted Passenger is my latest release. It is the Men's Adventure Fiction May 2025 Grand Prize winner. And One Man's Treasure, my treasure hunting adventure novel, which has more to try to explain than Unwanted Passenger. So, gentlemen, thank you again for having me on the show. It was a blast. You can also find me at suitup.author on Instagram.
Well, brilliant. We will pop a link down to your website down in the description below. I highly recommend everyone scroll down there, click on that link and go and check it out. As you go past, you'll see that big empty comment box. So make sure you leave Terrance a comment and let him know how much you appreciated everything he shared with us today. And of course, while you're down there, if you haven't already, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and there is that little bell icon. You can click on that and you'll get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be a brand new episode of Fully Booked coming out next week. So until then, cheerio.